Hi, welcome to this series, which has a name that I forget. I think it's called Breaking Through. Why is it called Breaking Through? I'm Simone White. I teach here at Penn in the English department, and I'm really happy to be here at Penn. I love the Kelly Writers House. It is a great resource, and if you've never been here before, welcome. It's a really special place, and I hope you come back. I, in the English department, sometimes host poets, and tonight I'm hosting two great poets, Shiv Kotecha and, am I pronouncing your last name?
Kotecha?
I've always said Kotecha. That's wrong.
It's there now.
Shiv Kotecha and Bianca Rae Messinger, who I think I am pronouncing correctly. Okay. Anyway, the reason I invite, the series is called Breaking Through because I try to invite writers who are, in some places they're called emerging, but that doesn't mean anything really. And what I'm trying to communicate to people is that they are on the verge of being known to a lot more people, either because they're publishing their first or second or even before that book. They're just starting to come into print or just starting to be known to the public, the poetry reading public. And the idea is to have an experience of hearing these writers and also to hear them talk about their own work, and but also importantly to talk about how it is that they ended up in this place of thinking of themselves as professional poets, which is a very strange job. And although it's one that continues to be cultivated and very important to a small number of us, right? And so that's the idea. There is a reason that we're here, and there's a kind of tenor to the conversation. And I'm really happy to welcome these folks tonight. I don't do a long intro. I'm just going to read their bios, and then we're going to read for about 17 to 20 minutes, and then we will talk to each other, and that will be our evening together. Okay, so Shiv Kotecha is the author of The Switch, which is for sale in the back, and EXTRIGUE, critical and also out of your pocket. Critical and creative writing can be found in Frieze, Art in America, the Brooklyn Rail, the Los Angeles Review of Books, and in other publications. He is the New York contributing editor of Frieze magazine. I don't think I knew that. And a PhD candidate in NYU's Department of English. Bianca Rae Messinger is a poet and translator living in Iowa City, Iowa. She is the author of the digital chapbook, The Love of God, and the land was 5 there? V there. Her translation of Juana Isolo's chapbook, You Need a Long Table Behind a Pile of Firewood to Have Lunch with Your Children in Ray-Bans, was recently published by Monster House Press. She currently teaches creative writing at the University of Iowa and was a poet in residence at the Fire Island Artist Residency. Please welcome Bianca first.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you, Simone, for inviting me, and Shiv. He was a great friend of mine. I'm just going to read a couple poems, and then a bit from a longer piece that's kind of a poem, kind of an essay. You can bring this up a little bit. You can decide for yourselves. Message to Joanna Brooke, 1. In the dream, everyone has a vagina but me. Around dusk, approaching nightfall, I show the people at a party this beautiful wisteria over the deck, above the deck. Planks of wood, which is attached to what I assume to be my house. Then people start making out, start showing each other their vaginas, and they're like these beams of light that come and envelop the whole deck, and I'm just sitting there. What are the physical parameters for a feeling like heaven? Do you both create and inhabit at the same time? This is not a sense of things being taken apart so much as it is a new form of building. Joanna's series is one where time builds. Thus, if we give enough vibration to time, enough feeling, such that each second contained within it the very luminous transigence, a willingness to change form, but more so a willingness to attach, such that each iteration of, say, a second while she stares out the window, becomes attached, so to speak, to feeling. This is how time might accumulate, and this might be a step closer to understanding, though understanding is not at all the right word here, what she is trying to do with time and space, so that, yes, she looks out the window, knows it, feels it, the gray field, gray as transigent, transigent as the ability to be both time and feeling, an attempt to compromise this expansive distance that lies between them, or it is not so much a distance as the space is unchartable. That's where we go when we're out sinking ships. It's about how to give yourself more time instead of being wrong, and to not think of it as foolhardy, but rather a continuation. In thinking of that room, I think of you, and that's a fair a place to start as any. Rope or some tiny elevator covered exactly in packing sheets, so that you would not recognize it gesturing or moving upwards to you. Then the objects obscured. You, I then, wander upward through some series of images of tracks in rows, trains, and us two being carried, and it's reeling, not falling, but going upward. I remember it differently, not having escaped, but rather going up with her. Now this is different, more stopping, no movement, as if everything slid down, moves to the side, or ends to that side. A terminal, not a body of play. That's it, not a backyard. Two equal parallel structures waiting for some folding. That's it. Someone says it. Over it, finding the rising action, the blue wave that goes over. Not a green streak. It's about free time. Some waiting goes on forever. Some call it borrowing. I think I loved you. I wouldn't call that fading pink exactly. More movement, a groundswell. That's an overture. She walks behind the plexiglass. Then the play opens, and she almost falls out of her seat. And who could forgive her? Green eyes locked in snow. Then we do some walking. Those are the notes you sent me on performing time, so that to think everything's been performed already implies a lack of person or patterning. You then create the wrong pattern. That you is unfortunate. To disintegrate implies a reduction. Or taking things without something in your stomach, plain like that, like what you would call it. Fair, for example. Now my father is in line in Massachusetts. An exuberant lesbian cook hits on me. We walk a whole half hour. My mother takes up biking. To try and remember what that world was like is not a believable establishing of space. Me being here and you being near me, and that a play, just you, wait and see. Sometimes there's movement, feel movement. What were you saying? The bugs like that. Yes, sometimes as a foreground, a proscenium almost rises over us. So it's not this now time, but another one. She watches me sleep. Why this insistence on it? Now is a different time with no wind. There are rabbits here. It's only fair, or a fun time. Not waiting for anyone, but our own time. Approaching. That's it. Bring a glass of water. Oh no. Now it's a manner of assembly. Should we play volleyball? Who are these people? Try a walkabout, E and S say. Send K my address. Trying not to fall in this noteworthy sunset near groups of people. In a force, but before it's a line for play, meaning when it's in the sand. She talked of it in or around as a coming around, not immediacy or posing, but not control exactly, but movement. They'll talk of work, and she's gone through so much, but that's when the scene shifts to orange. She's eating her pussy out. There is daylight and brackets. One of the last luminaries, line, or attention beneath the outward motion. Sensitivity is the place to be, and not this world. How to keep normal love. Suppose two lovers are lying together, and Hephaestus stands over them with his mending tools, asking, "What is it you human beings want from each other?" 1. Light comes into the rose in the window. Wanda writes in her diary, I walk out the door. Always I. That's not exactly how it goes. I told you I am calling time risque. That's not how it comes forth. We pass away into little swatches of characters like stained glass. What'll they ask? Things like, what happened to you? How are you? Is there a difference? It's all in the eyes when they look at you. Do they shift? Do they stay glued to the drink in their hands? Or are they exuberant, or at the very least ready for anything? That means some sort of shift from what goes on. This leads to other times, going back to a time like this, like before, like what it feels like sometimes, what time might feel like as a series, that series. What I mean is what it means to feel what a walk feels like, how people really do feel, I guess, and how this might have any sort of relation whatsoever to the idea of time as it pertains to whoever navigates it. Like what it feels like. The moving through the series we start at. Destabilization. It feels instead like walking through the backyard, and a man and his dog are in the far corner, only you think it is a man, and he is holding a shovel, and is he burying his dog? No, he is walking his dog, cowering gently, then beginning a sort of movement. You, the one watching this, are then not an evacuation, to put it plainly, but rather, in watching, you maintain a marvelous presence. But the grass disappears. Then later, a way in, those curtains that only go halfway, annoyed at some time, the only time together. And it comes to you then, at once, at an eventual angle. Feeling that approach, I feel those ridges move farther and farther. How do you negotiate the eventual coming apart? Or flowers? Not a coming back and forth. It was a return, not a back and forth, but around, watching those years come back. Not cleanliness exactly, but warmth. Finding a way around bigger things when it doesn't always look right, a certain soreness. Looking for it, negotiating time or what's between it, talk. You remember, you seem to have a selective memory, to continue like that. There goes a dump truck, a whirlwind, a tree with half its leaves, yellow flags in the yard, every car a cop, and steep curbs. I let her in, and the flags again, inside flags, in some continuous motion, not stoppage, more like further, or a spiral. Rose sleeps. She did not call it an outpouring, though there was steam and needles coming in waves like a morning, those branches all together like that. In coming, in the way she went to school, or dug up rocks, that opening in ridges, almost plaintive, and it was morning. She comes to her dream, and they direct a play, a middle outpouring after the first, how you say it, eventual? You make this motion, and the lead falls down, or is in the process of injury. You do remember that small cafe? And its trellis? Neither afraid of that moment, but acting in its moment as a form of protection. Then appearing only to go back. I didn't think you'd like me. We watch the grains fall, or do they plunge upwards? I don't know. I thought we were supposed to be in defense of the novel. They all wear the same hat. 5. Spring wasn't springing as it should. Wanda didn't know how to talk about her past. What she meant was that, or what she, Wanda, wanted to. was to enter the world as one generally enters the world, or some sort of normalization of one's entrance into the world. For all intents and purposes, we can call this birth. It's as good an entrance as any, or as bad. Wanda wants to be reborn, or a birth is as good as anything, or as bad as anything, depending on the circumstances. Was it raining or snowing in M? No one knows. When she asked them, the commuter rail station wouldn't run that day. They had to take a cab. And it was expensive, and the snow was melting in salty puddles around the Pachysandra that grew along the train tracks, and so this birth was not off to a great start. Yet, to feel okay with whatever this process could be called or described as was unfortunately a desire of Wanda's. Or to have it happen again. But then again, what is worse? Being born wrong or being born again wrong? But yes. So no one doesn't talk about their past in such a way. It's as if it's gone and then there's this new normal, whatever that is. If one gets to enter the world by re-entering the Virgin Mary's womb, then by God, Wanda had determined it possible to envision this normalcy in her own terms. Yes, terms. This is what had become troublesome, or at any rate, more difficult. Six. Wanda receives a text message from Gregor. Do you think about me when you masturbate? Wanda is unsure how to respond. Well, yes, Wanda did enjoy heartily plunging her fingers into his rectum from time to time. She could not truly say whether this act was coupled with a desire for Gregor. Thinking about Gregor in terms of Wanda's own sexuality always arose under the blanket of shame or need or obstruction. It wasn't so much the concept of desire that interested her, but rather of what is to be done with one's production. Where does it go? Through what tubes, etc.? Her current ones were not working, and little Gregor was off hawking his wares. Wanda responds, yeah, I guess. No, yeah, I do. What was not addressed in this text message was that Wanda's belief that masturbation would lead to damnation. Therefore, if she were to masturbate in the morning, her afternoon would be damned. Thus, the only logical time to masturbate was at nighttime, if only because there would be less of the fucked damn time. At the same time, Wanda would also masturbate to relieve stress, and as a result of which found herself in predicaments. To go through a day is a predicament. 7. Gregor sends a text message. So then, what is this between whose description of a scene, or how to convey that scene, or does there exist a hierarchy of subjects? Yes. The subjects that need to be talked about more. And what about the other ones? What other ones? Wanda is in the covers rubbing herself with a copy of George Bataille's collected poems, which, to be honest, are not really that good. The sort of stark brilliance of Story of the Eye does not translate itself well to verse, or the translation sucks, or a combination of these two things. In order to sublimate this letdown, she begins to insert a glass dildo into herself, starting by rubbing herself with oil, then moving it in determined little bursts. She begins to coo a bit. Wanda then begins to stick her fist into her ass, guiding herself slowly and taking deep breaths, etc. Wanda takes a break from sticking her fist up her ass to respond. I mean memory. Is memory strong enough? Does it need to be held, or can you let it slip away? I don't mean slip away as in lose, but as in how to create a way to resume, to then go back to some past, of an individual past, if such a thing exists, entirely presumptuous, and then, from there, be able to walk through it, from there, into the future, or present. The Greeks believed the future was behind you, because it is what you cannot see. So then, if you were able to see the behind of your memories, would that not be the future, too? Thank you.
Thank you, Bianca. That was really great. It's a pleasure to read with you. Thank you, Simone, and to everyone that came. I'm going to read from my book, and I'm going to just sort of bop around a little. I'm going to start with a piece and then sort of move along. There's a piece, the middle section of the book is called Obedience Residency Manual, and I gave myself a fake residency for a month to not text a lover, and to every time I wanted to text, make up a task for myself. So then that became a series of writing prompts. First, take the month. Shut up. Then there's just a picture of a Beanie Baby puppy, I think, being held by its tail. It's an image by Hervé Guibert, this photographer and journalist and novelist from France. Okay, it's time to get out of your house. Get out. Go to the cock. Leave your phone in your pocket and stand inside. Try not to linger at any one thing. Make no immediate connections. Stand by. And consider leaving. Okay, enjoy yourself a little bit. Look around, order 3 or 4 tequilas in a row, and then ask yourself who, by texting "I love you," you will benefit. Okay, if you could, please remove your hands. I said shut your mouth. You go home. Perhaps you think grabbing your phone and texting "I love you" will make a brand new kind of pleasure possible for this person to have, or will at least reduce whatever ex-vulnerability they feel. But you are wrong. The fact is, the ways you've deemed appropriate to reach out to them in the first place, "Hi," or "Hey, how are you? I just wanted to check in and see how you were. It's been a while. I'm really glad we can talk," or "Hey, BB, I love you," fulfill no actual purpose other than to calm you down, providing for you, not them, momentary relief that is equitable and kind to the effects of taking 1/4 of a Xanax with food, or hitting a bowl 2 to 3 times alone, followed by a hot shower, or jerking off once. Or twice. Or jerking off 100 times to the same scene until the video itself begins to shudder, its contents suddenly rendered unfamiliar and disfigured inside the screen you have propped up on your chest like an iron curtain between your face where your eyes are and your legs where your dick is. Until all of the scenes, whatever details that have the last 99 times at least, successfully made the bodies in it seem impressively specific to you, a little special even, maybe because of the lighting, or maybe you think because of the occasional flickering of unexpected traces of the bodies that the lighting, despite the loose narrative, increases your chance of seeing. The irregular hair pattern, the flecks of eczema, the dirty fingernails, the mildly inflamed warts, the small map of ass pimples, the particularly chapped lip, all start to become discarnate, each detail receding enough from focus so that for a moment, other things can be seen. The rather generic postures the people in the scene were specifically instructed to take, for instance, or the rather awkward angle they decided to shoot the scene from, or the 2 maybe more soft but muscular and ageless bodies with predictable tufts of hair in all the right places, and the thin film of sweat coating each of them uniformly, flattening out those once attractive details in favor of a head-to-toe glisten, due, you think, decandid to a very effective placement of lights. Yes, you moan suddenly. A single high-key light, a fill, and 1, maybe 2 hardback lights so as to focus the jerker-offer's attention on the asses, sacks, and faces of the men while remaining mobile so that, over the duration of the film, the whatever jerker-offer is guided to draw his focus into the image on the actors, deflecting his attention away from the rather nondescript set the 2 agents have chosen to fuck inside of. But not this time. This time you've stumbled beyond that facade and you say to yourself out loud again, yes, that's definitely a well-placed keynote light, set up by a crew of other unphotographed but likely very sweaty men in the upper left corner of the room the scene is shot in. In a room that could be a tool shed on a ranch somewhere, possibly even on the one on Jake Crew's ranch, a farm-free cattleless ranch periodically rented out for film shoots, which must also be used, based on what can be seen here, as some sort of props room. Especially as you notice in the right-hand corner of the frame, near the couch, the pair of shorts Jason removed in the final outdoor scene of picking up trash, and on the other side of the frame, the left on the floor, the pipe put in and never removed from AJ's ass in barebacked rednecks. And in the center of the frame, on the table, the pair of wine glasses that appear as the main transitional object in Panic Love, the switch, which launches the 40-minute or so fantasy sequence in which the young whatever sleeping lover successfully seduces his new stepfather moments after the young lover's mother leaves the room. In this film, a kitchen. But not before the stepfather pours out 2 glasses of wine while telling his young stepson, in an act of observed and appreciated bonding, a story about when he, the stepfather, was himself a boy and hitchhiked all by himself, catching trout and rides across the wilds of Montana. The wine glasses, of course, are never sipped for the duration of the fantasy, but are returned to later in a close-up shot in order to bookend the scene. This gives the introductory scene closure before the following scene, which begins with the slow fade to a shot of the young lover's smooth, unconscious face before the camera zooms out to reveal his body stretching across and over a twin-sized cot, to the left of which the reveal continues. The rugged stepfather is kneeling on the floor, reaching out to blow the young, waking body. You pause, grunt, continue. In front of you is a whole room full of objects suggestively rearranged in a previously unused location, a tool shed, which now you've jerked off to 1 to 99 times. Wow, extraordinary. And it doesn't even, you level the image shuttering between you and your dick, have that weird annoying yellow light at the edge of the frame that many other scenes you have jerked to 1 to 100 times have. No intrusive flare of sunlight creeps into the frame, making the as-of-yet unpaid pair of bodies seem frightened or caught. It looks like there was a generous budget here, as the varying indoor-outdoor color schemes and temperatures are regulated by the premeditated purchase of standard shooting lights, which the professional lighting crew took some care to arrange. First, by matching each of the color lights, and then, probably without taking a break, white balancing the room, making the tool shed look, you think, as it was probably intended to look. Like a break room, where mechanics go to cool off and to get away from their primary work environment, a 2-car garage. The lighting is probably about 90% of what the film crew has to pay attention to when they're setting up. Or maybe not. Maybe after making sure that the lighting matches the bodies, they also have to make sure that the ambient sound is okay, or that it's not too cold in the room. There are so many things that a crew has to pay attention or has to do before they shoot and to modify until the deed is done. Fascinating, you think, that Ace and Jacob probably had to maintain for the whole day, maybe even 2, the elements of their chemistry that really make their attraction for each other seem totally believable and rich to others. Skeptics of love like yourself. Crucial make it or break it moments in the sequence, even if it will be all rearranged in post anyway. The initial pounce, the lift, the near come of one member or the other, while the crew adjusts several lights around them. Pauses punctuate the cast and the crew's day, while 2 men who are fucking say nothing to each other, men who aren't fucking speak. As when the director Joe, who cares for his craft, who's really worked hard at it, turns to his lighting guy for assistance. Hey, Hank, could you come up here and put a little more light up to next to Ace's sack? Yeah. Do you see that? Yeah, I'm really not getting anything down there. I don't. It's a pink ass walnut. That's all I see. It needs some light on the sack down there. Do you got anything? Or when Stan and Joe are suddenly needed as Hank is busy adjusting a bounce. We're definitely gonna need something for the fucking contrast in here, Hank says, adjusting things. Look at that. See, a little more. On Cinnabons over there. Do you see what I mean? He's flopping all around. I don't know what to do. And the light there, it's not even getting close. It's not even hitting the right. Do you see that? What should we do? Hank, Stan, Joe, and the rest of the sweaty crew take turns speaking to one another, fidgeting around Ace and Jacob, working their asses off for a long 2-day shoot to successfully display the men taking turns penetrating one another. Sometimes Joe checks in. How you doing, Ace? We're going to need you to keep it in there just like that for like a few more minutes. Try getting up on your tiptoes for it. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and like before, keep your fists on the small part of his back. Yeah, okay, we're good. And Ace checks in with Jacob. Is that okay? Yes, Dad, I'm fine actually. Certain angles you imagine must have been especially difficult to light due to the fact that one of the guys is white and the other guy is brown, a difference in skin surface that the lighting crew had to prepare for. They must have had to make some other kind of sacrifice to light this scene of brown Ace plowing white Jacob at this angle so beautifully, like cutting the actors' salaries so as have enough to pay for Mark, the more wizened lighting assistant, to be there. Mark, I'm so glad you could come through for us today, bud. No problem. My full-time gig's around the corner, man. What do you need? Would you look at this for me? I can't... See, look at that. I mean... Oh, I can't... Ace looks like a goddamn little monkey. Look at his goddamn ears. Says Mark. No offense, Ace. You guys are doing great. Really just awesome. It's good. But Mark, just look at that. Should I put that here? I need your advice. They set up some more lights. Oh God, now look at him. Look at his ass. That literally looks like the moon. Mark, it looks like he's mooning me. I don't need to see that, Joe complains, kneeling down to look from a different angle. And he's actually got a great ass. This looks like shit. Mark, you got that Ultrafire, right? Mark unzips his backpack and pulls out the Ultrafire Mini XPE Q5 he picked up earlier. He nervously crabs beneath the couple with his Ultrafire strapped to a pole. He remembers briefly being a film student who never knew how to light anything. He tries not to get insecure about it, reminding himself that he is rich and good at talking and that he is needed here on the set, and his Ultrafire will please Joe as it will address the actor's white and brown surfaces uniquely. Joe really did need a man like Mark. Ace holds still silently inside Jacob. Mark again shoves the bulb into the curve of Ace's ass. Fuck! Sorry, man. Don't worry. From here, where the shot is, no one's even gonna see that shit. You're fucking burning my ass, man. This is gonna look great. They shoot some more. Fuck. That fucking hurts, man. I'm losing it. At this point, Jacob, the dissociating bottom, paler than ever, chimes in. What the hell? I don't know what the fuck's going on, babe. This fucker, we're good. Let's just go. I'm tired. Fuck, I'm sorry, I did it again. Dude, come on. The crew pauses the otherwise smooth shooting to medicate the burns. They then they decide to reshoot the entire scene from the other side of the room so as to avoid getting Ace's blotchy burn on cam. As they move everything over, they realize they didn't need such a complicated setup in the first place. They let Mark go, and they continue. The AD, also named Mark, takes charge and makes the crew run fast, as they've only rented the ranch for 2 days. He forces them all, Joe the director, and Hank and Stan and Ace and Jacob, to skip their lunch hour so that they can make it to their later-than-expected deadline. You come and slam your laptop shut. A few minutes pass. You check your text, and a momentary feeling appears. Over the next couple of minutes, you review your options. Get up and go for a walk, or write a letter to a friend, or get out of your chair, or make any other act seem better to you for now than saying, I love you, to this whatever person. Any old thing. Like prying open a shut screen, pulling open a rapidly shifting set of images and staring at them until you render yourself entirely still for just long enough to know that for now, like before, your feelings can be kept to yourself. Then there's an image of a dog looking up at was presumably a camera held by a human. It's a puppy. Pick up your phone. I think like all bad habits, it's not a matter of weakness or strength. You just have to not want to do it anymore. Right. Which is very true. Re-sext v-text. Change his name on your phone to Are You Sure? Lol. Adding that to my puppy manifesto. You should make a list of all the things you find annoying about him if he actually started dating you. I think a dialogue-based task is in order. Like instead of sending him the text, write in a Word document and then write the text you'd hope to receive in response, then respond to them, etc. Find out if you'd actually like to text yourself. I also like to write dialogues where I imagine them professing their love and how I would react. Like, write dialogue for a scene that ends with him saying, I've tried to resist, but all I want to do is to be with you, and only you. Can we just dive into this? I love you. Lots of text. I'm just going to skip through some of this. There's another dog, and this time in the water, attempting to come out. I had a drink at that white dog place. There's a lot of dogs there as well. More text. It was a long month. The 22nd. You just let go and sing. I'm in a mood and it feels like love. Yeah, it really feels like love. I'm waiting for someone Then you sing, I hope this feeling doesn't steal my heart. Then you sing, and then you sing, dreams have started residing in my eyes. Then you sing, as if someone is calling me with their eyes. Then you sing, then you sing, I'm in a mood, a kind of mood where I'd like to see someone. Yes, that's a time, it's time to wait for someone. Then you sing, Then you sing, when I met my beloved in my dreams. Then you sing, I swear I lost my sleep. Then you sing, I'm in a mood, I'm feeling drunk, it's definitely time to wait for someone. Then you sing, I really hope this feeling doesn't steal my heart. Then you sing, I'm the queen of the king of my dreams. Then you sing, Then you sing, and this false story, my imagination, better not have come true. Then you sing, I'm in a mood, I feel like someone letting someone in. Yes, it's definitely time to wait for someone. Then you sing, may this moody season not steal my heart. Then you sing, oh, my mood, it really feels like love. Then you sing, There's a severed head. More text, and the piece ends with a table of contents. Page 83, first. Page 84, Agna Du. Page 85, third. Page 86, fourth. Page 87, fifth. Page 88, sixth. Page 89, Discarnate Nude. Page 96, Buddy Being Needy. Page 97, Buddy Being Needy. Page 98, 10th. Page 99, Obedience Residency Manual. Page 106, 12th. Page 107, Swim Good. Page 113, 14th. Page 114, 15th. Page 115, 16th. Page 116, 17th. Page 117, 18th. Page 119, Heaven. Page 120, Heaven. Page 129, Heaven. Page 130, 22nd. Page 132, The Hypothesis of the Stolen Head. Page 133, The Hypothesis of the Stolen Head. Page 142, The Hypothesis of the Stolen Head. That's how the month ends. Thanks.
Okay. So, generally at this point, I ask a couple of questions to get us started. And then, hopefully you will ask some questions too as we move on, but this is a completely unstructured and unplanned conversation. The nature of your readings made me think that I should ask some dry questions that nonetheless might have interesting answers. So here's the first one. Are you a poet?
There's a poem in this book. I've definitely written poems. I think I write books more than poems. I think that's always been the case, but I do really think about line breaks when they need to be made, which makes poems.
Really?
Yes. A lot of this book was actually written in prose, and then I was thinking about how formally it might be more interesting to make something look like a poem, and I think that appearance of poetry was more my interest in this case. Yeah, I guess I'm a poet.
Okay. Bianca.
I don't know what else to call myself, so that's sort of where I'm at. There are long line breaks in what I read.
Can I see?
Yeah. It's a lot of pages.
Yeah.
So they're at the beginning, they're long lines that then go into smaller lines. Like spoons or ladles.
Yeah, they look like tablespoon measures.
Yeah. But I don't think about them as I don't know. I like to think about... I also write plays. And so I feel like there's always a lot of voices running around and I don't know how to scoop them up. Yeah.
Maybe this is a follow-up question. But so the thing that I'm always thinking about is why would anyone continue to write poetry in the 21st century given that its dispersal of form and it's formal confusion, right? And so in a way, you both seem to have found interesting solutions to this problem of poetry having, I was so shocked that you would say poetry was written in lines. I was like, what? Why would you say this? Because when I think of your work, which is, so in terms of classification and how you all, I would like to hear you talk about this a little bit, but you come from very different sort of poetic communities and publishing traditions, right? So like the line break is not really the thing that circulates among the quote unquote, I don't know what you want to call it. Let's call it post-conceptualists or something. I'm sorry, I'm just saying it because it's out there in print.
That's true. It's out there in print. It's true. Diana Hamilton, my roommate, wrote a piece on the Poetry Foundation Harriet blog that called it fictional poetry, and I think about that often. And instead of using post-conceptual, I think of my poems as specifically durational. Like they're very interested in investigating questions of temporality and attention in various formats. But yeah, no, there are definitely like, I don't think I can work or make poems without like a constraint or a procedure of some kind. It's much easier for me to have like something to build with or something to respond to rather than me just writing through a thing. So the middle section that I read today is very much like I had in my mind like Bernadette Mayer's writing experiments, Jack Spicer's Poetry is Magic workshop, and Anne Goretta's Not One Day. Is that the name of the book? Well, she writes about basically does the same thing, or like she did it before me, but she like writes about one woman for every day that she, like one X every day, and that becomes a constraint. So yeah, I don't know if that doesn't even answer your question. I think I would be a fictional poet or a procedural poet. I think those are the modes in which I work, but post-conceptual is like one of the things that it's like contemporariness. I don't know how to define
close
that.
to this term. Can you answer? Because I feel like you will have a very different answer.
I mean, the question is sort of how do we come to this form, or how do I?
Yeah, how do you achieve your current poetic situation formally, right? And still think of yourself. I mean, I heard something happening in your reading, which was that there was a very deliberate meditation on time that began to take the shape of a deliberation on narrative itself, which had properties of a story. Yeah. But will you say something? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it started. So the first couple poems that I read started out as emails, as a lot of my poems do. One was like, this was an email to Joey Yaras Alguacin, and then it turned into like a message to Joanna Brooke, the musician, sort of minimalist musician who sort of went into stopped making music and then just started studying transcendental meditation because like she couldn't get over sort of this like the divide between sort of time and music and sort of music's temporalities, and she could like the space between everything sort of became her obsession. But I feel like a lot of sort of impetus for writing comes from other people and comes from like being in community and being around people. It doesn't happen like in its own. And that meditation on time, I mean, comes from, I mean, a lot of it is sort of, I feel like Leslie Scalapino's work is like very formative in terms of like that, I don't know, finding a system for it that makes some sort of sense or that she's like sort of comfortable in.
I want to say a little bit more about finding, the phrase finding the system for it that one feels comfortable in seems like something that you could say more about.
Yeah. It's hard. I don't know. That's what's like, that's where I think narrative can be useful for poets and for me. I mean, I think that's sort of, in terms of there being a sort of creating a formal bridge between different poetries that might be existing within the same text, or if such a thing exists, but or working between different temporalities is sort of I don't know if narrative exists any more than anything else, but somehow there seems to be like a bridge somewhere, and I guess I'm looking for that. Yeah.
So we were saying time as if that's a word everybody knows, but it strikes me as like an increasingly fraught word that maybe we need to say more about. What do you mean, time? I mean, I think I know what time is, but the way we're using it here seems like maybe we're using it in 3 different ways.
Yeah.
And so you first, maybe?
Sure.
What times are we talking about? What is time?
It's very relative. I mean, this book is mostly sort of relationship, or I don't know. I think this is going to be a book, something like a book. I'm interested in like what happens between time and feeling, and like how feelings for people affect time, more or less.
Okay.
So yeah, so not like individual time, but more like I don't know if that makes
See,
sense.
it's so
It's very
confusing. Okay. No, I'm serious. I'm like, this is my main problem right now.
It's a really big problem for me too. I think I'm writing a dissertation that's apparently about time, and I don't have an argument. Maybe like time is gay is my argument, but like I don't know what that means either. I had a better answer to this that
It's a noun.
It's a noun.
Okay. No, I'm serious. I'm really troubled by it. It is a noun which represents what?
Okay, so
You're the expert.
I think I started writing poetry because I read Gertrude Stein.
Okay.
And she has that essay, Composition as Explanation. Mm-hmm. And I've been trying to think about this essay for many years, of course. It's a really slippery text. And I think one thing that she's doing is connecting, obviously, the sort of atrocities of World War I to the like sort of modernist art practice. And one thing that happens in the meantime is that the continuous present appears, which is able to fold past, present, and future into one thing. Mm-hmm. And I've been trying to think about poetry as having time, X variable, as a kind of marking system for something else going on. So like, I think in my work, time doesn't want to become like representational. Like I don't want to represent time, which I think events. That Stein does. Mm-hmm. But I think I want to think about time as like a prosthetic or something that like speaks to the work, but in a like a more literal way or something like that. Like it's just that this is like, here's a clock. That's it. It's not like a vital object that one of Stein's tender buttons could be, for instance. I mean, Stein is my everything, but like I think that's why I have to work in opposition to that practice because I can't get too close.
Yeah.
I could go on talking about this for a long time, but I won't. I'm just going to move on to the next question like they do on NPR. So the other question I think is related is, what do you think attention is? I hear a lot of questions about what it means to pay attention to something, what it means to care for something poetically, right? What it is to take an object or an experience and turn it and around and around and around. What is that?
Are you asking about poetic attention or attention as like a concept?
You are the person who is to answer the question.
Which is why I'm clarifying.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I'm asking how you regard that as part of your practice.
Right.
Yeah. I can try to
please
start. I mean, attention for I don't know. I mean, for me, attention is sort of, it's impossible to think about what someone else, if I start thinking about what someone else will be, like, attention is, I think attention is generally thought of as, like, something that's, like, a marking language for, like, someone else. Mm-hmm. Or, like, if in this certain sort of, like, confluence of things someone writes, then it evokes somebody else's sort of response for some reason. But I guess intention for me is more sort of like where, I guess I'm interested in sort of those moments where I can continue to read something and still find that I've written and not sort of, and still have it be attentive to me in some way, where I'm still like, I don't know what that was, but that's interesting. So something like that, I think.
I don't know if I have another. I have to like reach back into the vault and pull out another poet to answer the question rather than myself in a way. But I think like because I don't have a correct answer, but I do have an idea of what other writers have been thinking, and those thoughts don't even make any sense to me. So I'm struggling with them. Mm. But in Poe's philosophy of composition, he writes about the Raven. Like a year after, and he's like a poor magazine editor, and he writes this piece that's like, how can anyone explain a poem? I'll explain a poem, I'll explain my own. And then he like writes this really methodical, mathematical kind of reading of the Raven, but he has one moment in there where he's like, first you have to have like a really pure like affect or something like that, and then you have to plug that affect in to a like mathematically constructed sort of length, and he says it like for a poem I'm thinking of the wrong essay, but he says in the poem that like that a poem should be no longer than an hour
to read.
Yeah, or like but that actually doesn't fit his poems. It fits his short stories. So there's just this, but he says it's because, I'm sorry, I'm like fumbling over my words.
He speaks in complete sentences.
He said, he says it's because American reading audiences only have a particular attention span, so you can't possibly go over an hour, which is an absurd fantasy. Like, that he's just like claiming that onto his own reading public so that then, in my understanding, they can better digest his weird stories. Like he's like really making the attention for them. So I think that attention is probably controlled by greater forces.
That's interesting.
And I don't think that distraction is necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask if folks have questions at this point. No question is a bad one either. Yeah.
Well, weird. Shiv, I'm interested in your book, The Switch as a Project. I'm interested in, did it take you a month to write it? What was the editing process like? What was the process like for writing it?
The whole month thing is a whole lie. But it was a way to structure that part of the book.
Okay.
I did give myself tasks to not text a particularly cruel lover things like I love you. And it really did. It was like in Berlin, I started making a list of other things I could do. And I realized that a lot of the things I was telling myself to do to calm myself down were like literal writing prompts. It's like, write a letter to Diana, write a letter to Sarah, like write this down. And that became a way of like, I just wrote out a series of prompts without knowing. And then I think I noticed, so I like moved in with Diana, and our roommate-ship has a lot to do with the way that this book is constructed. She edited the book also. It's entirely fictional, our relationship in here. We appear as characters. But she thinks a lot about the epistolary form, and so I actually was like, oh, this can actually become a form of direct address, which I haven't really experimented with before. And so it allowed me to both write. It allowed me to write to specific people, but also allowed me to write more personally, which had never been something I had done. or about my personal life, for instance. Yeah, so that's how it sort of, that's how the thinking happened. And then I just decided like a month seems chill. And then like wrote like on a Word document 1 through 30 and then separated the things and then filled the space out. So in that sense, to me, it's like Jack Spicer's poetry magic workshop where he like just gives him his class the prompts, but there's like really only so much space to fill, and that the way they fill it is what is the meaningful part or something like that. It's not really magic, right?
Except it's totally magic.
Yeah.
Or Bernadette studying hunger is also
Or Bernadette
a month,
studying hunger,
like a month drug is like what she calls it.
Yeah.
Speaking of time as a drug.
Other questions? I'm gonna sit quietly while you think of a question for just a minute, so don't get nervous. But think of a question. Okay. Should I call in someone? I have I can keep asking questions, but I do that all day. No? Okay. I'm not going to ask questions indefinitely, but I am unconvinced by this question of the question of the personal in the work being something that has to be mediated in some way by, this is actually related to the problem of time in the work.
Yeah.
It seems to me that persons and personalities, right, are related to the question of how long it takes or how the duration of any experience or feeling, right? So it's like, as you were saying about context, like all time has a context. It seems to me that like you can't actually know anything about time outside of the experience of your own sensations, right? And so I'm very curious about how it is that one controls, right, the dispersal of the self in a poem, right? Because in a way, it's an experiment with blending, right, the capacity to communicate this like sticky but ephemeral thing called feeling or something like that, right? Is it? But I don't. And the translation of it into a fiction or your fiction about Gregor and tell
Wanda?
me. I always want to say Maud, but it's Wanda.
Maybe I could add a Maud in there.
Maybe. I find that I just think it's incredible because right, we know Gregor from somewhere else, but I have no idea what they're doing in there. You know what I mean? Like the action of their relationship seems so unlike a story that has like, it's not you know what I mean? It's a completely transformed thing, and it comes from you, right? And it's and this is the thing that makes it so miraculous. And as I'm listening to it, like I'm like, oh well, obviously this is not possible without Bianca, but it's not about Bianca. Can you say something about that? I mean, like, what is that chemistry? What's going on? Yeah, like, how does it... for you, what's the relationship between that story and life?
I mean, it's a little manic, but in terms of, like, the moment of writing it, or the beginning of it, was sort of very manic, and I had to, like, pare it back a bit. So
it's been through some things.
Yeah. But I guess it's... the relationship is more of, it's sort of like of, it's a symbiotic relationship that isn't working in fundamental ways. But they are attached to each other, but can sometimes detach. But at certain points, they have to come back to each other, like to sleep. They have to like sleep with each other, nestled into each other. So it's sort of like, and they have very specific habits. But I don't know. They help. They were very like helpful at a time when I needed someone to go through things with. So Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I feel that as I'm reading this. I wouldn't have known any of that, but there's something about what you just described that helps me to understand that.
Karen Brad was talking about, talks about electrons as being these sort of like queer particles, because they sort of, even if you look at the electron on like the most like, I don't know anything about physics, but she's like, it's both haptic and the other one, whatever. Yeah.
What's the other thing?
I forget. Like
atmospheric or something?
Physical and like theoretical. I don't know. They're like both. They're able to switch like their energies in some ways. So on the quantum level, they're sort of like going back and forth between genders in this way, and so it feels kind of like that, I guess.
Yeah. I think that work is really exciting, as you can tell. Any other questions? I think we can say thank you. Thank you so much for your reading.
Thank you
so much. Thank you.